Hello, Swami Sarvapriyananda.
Thank you for having me, Ludovic.
I'm delighted to welcome you to the channel today, and really thank you for accepting my invitation. I know that you are a very busy person, so it's wonderful to have you here. I will
I'm not that
try.
busy, but but still, it's good to be here. It's a
oh,
subject that I love speaking about, so thank you for giving me the opportunity.
I will try to do a little presentation of your background, a very little one. You are a Hindu monk of the Ramakrishna order, and you are the current resident Swami and head of the Vedanta Society of New York. And you are a well-known speaker on Advaita Vedanta, and your talks are extremely popular worldwide. So it's a pleasure to talk about these matters with you today. And for my first question, could you tell us about your background, your journey? What teachers and masters were on your path, and what led you to dedicate your life to these teachings?
Thank you, Ludovic. Well, let's see. I grew up on the eastern part of India in a state called Odisha, in a city called Bhubaneswar, very ancient city. It's known as the city of temples. There are many ancient temples, some of them older than 1,000 years. So it has a deep spiritual background. I grew up in a house. My parents were devoted. They were followers of the Ramakrishna Vivekananda tradition in Hinduism. And when I grew up, there were all these books of Swami Vivekananda and other masters in the house. Swami Vivekananda is probably the most prominent Hindu teacher of the 19th and 20th centuries. Um, and I remember reading those books with fascination. I think I belong to, and you too, I think we belong to the last pre-internet generation. So um, we grew up with books, and I used to read a lot. So there were these books of a spiritual life, of yoga, of Vedanta, books by Swami Vivekananda. I remember being fascinated by what they said. They said that God is real, that there is an ultimate spiritual reality, and that we can access it. And even more, that is the goal of human life, and that there are these practices to access it, meditation and different kinds of practices. And then, of course, I saw people who were actually doing that. I mean, apart from my parents, we used to go to the ashram, which was near our house. It was a Ramakrishna monastery, and the monks were there, so I would see them. And I loved the atmosphere of the monastery. I think the seeds were planted like that in my early childhood. So as I grew up, I decided this is the life for me, a life in the quest of God realization or spiritual realization. And since I really didn't want anything else, I decided to be a monk, like a pointed, focused search for God. And as soon as I completed my studies, I graduated. And the very next day, I mean, after finishing my courses, the very next day, I joined the monastery. I think that was in 1994. I had already been initiated into a mantra practice by the president of our order at that time, Swami Bhuteshanandaji. So that was my primary initiation. And when I became a monk, there are two levels of initiation. There's an initiation into novitiate called brahmacharya, and then a final initiation into the vows of monasticism, which I got in 2004. So about 9 years, 10 years after I joined the order. And you get this new name, Swami so and so.
Mm.
I got Swami Sarvapriyananda. All through the time, I kept on my studies, and I was very lucky to have a variety of teachers, especially within the monastic order, great scholars, great masters. I can that too many to name, but I took the opportunity to study with them whenever I could. We have formal training in our order for 2 years in our main monastery on the bank of the Ganga in near Calcutta. This place is called Belur, but it's a beautiful monastery. It's now a major pilgrimage center in India now and abroad. People come from all over the world to see this. It was established by Swami Vivekananda. So there you have 2 years of formal training, scriptural study, meditation, a very strict monastic discipline and routine. Beyond that also, beyond the limits of our order, when I went to the Himalayas on at least a couple of occasions, I found teachers there. So I would go and join the classes and study. Sometimes I got the opportunity of personal talks. Besides that, my own studies, of course, in Indian philosophy, especially in Advaita Vedanta, which is our home tradition, and also wider studies in world philosophy and religions and mystical traditions of the world. Yes, I would say that about sums it all.
Your main teaching is Advaita Vedanta, and can you explain does what does it cover? What it means and what it is?
Yes. If we can start with the textual basis of it. So if you're going to ask about a tradition, it's good to start with what are the texts? Where does it come from? And here it's very clear. This tradition, Advaita Vedanta, comes from the texts called the Upanishads. In fact, when we learn a traditional definition of Advaita Vedanta, the Sanskrit definition is Vedanta Nama Upanishad Pramanam, which means Vedanta is surely the source of spiritual knowledge called the Upanishads. So Upanishads are a range of texts which are found in the Vedas. The Vedas are the religious books, the original religious books of the Hindus. They are vast religious literature, but it's the original religious books of the Hindus. Probably the oldest living spiritual tradition in the world today. Now, these Upanishads are many in number, and from them have emanated multiple schools of philosophy. Among them is what we call the traditional Advaita Vedanta. So it is basically an interpretation of these ancient texts. Around 1200 years ago, around 880, there was a great master called Adi Shankaracharya. So what he did was he took 10, arguably 11 of these Upanishads and wrote his commentaries, in Sanskrit. So these commentaries on these Upanishads form the foundation of Advaita Vedanta. Of course, there are other texts. Most famous of those is the Bhagavad Gita. If there's one text that you would, we would select to represent Hinduism, all of Hinduism, it would probably be the Bhagavad Gita. So Bhagavad Gita is actually a text of Vedanta. And there is a lesser known text called the Brahma Sutras, the sutras or aphorisms of Brahman. The word Brahman you'll come across again and again. It means the ultimate reality, the absolute, pure being, pure bliss, pure consciousness. And Shankaracharya wrote these commentaries that became the foundation of what is known as classical Advaita Vedanta. And after Shankaracharya, of course, there were numerous post-Shankara Advaita masters who are known more by the works they wrote. Biographies were not very fashionable in those days, so we have very little scanty information about them. Shankaracharya, the extensive biography about Shankaracharya, but others we don't know so much about. But from that time onwards, Advaita Vedanta has become at least philosophically predominant, though in the mass life of the Hindus, it's mostly a dualistic, devotional kind of religion with a variety of deities which can be worshipped. Now, in the modern time, in the last 100, 150 years, Advaita Vedanta has been taught by a range of teachers, including those at the source of our particular order, Sri Ramakrishna, who's probably the most famous and well-known, significant figure in Hinduism in the 19th century, in the modern world probably. and his disciple Swami Vivekananda, and other teachers also, like very famously Ramana Maharshi, and numerous other teachers. So from Vivekananda's time, this has been transmitted across the world. So Vivekananda came to the West and the World Parliament of Religions in 1893 in Chicago, and talked about Hinduism, primarily about Vedanta and primarily about Advaita Vedanta. There are other schools of Vedanta. There are dualistic schools of Vedanta. There are quasi monastic schools of Vedanta. At least 10 major schools of Vedanta are there. But our tradition is primarily Advaitic. Why I'm saying primarily, classical Advaita Vedanta would dialectically reject other interpretations of the Upanishads, of the Bhagavad Gita, of the Brahma Sutras. But in our tradition, it's much more broad, much more synthetic, much more accepting tradition. So what we say, we are primarily non-dualists, Advaitins, but we also say that all those other paths are true. The dualistic interpretation is also true. Other interpretations are true. In what sense? Sri Ramakrishna is famous for having taught as many faiths, so many paths. Um, or more specifically, more accurately, as many views, so many paths. So there are all these ancient paths. From his perspective, he said that they are all approaching the same reality. But because that reality is beyond language, because that reality is beyond conception, when we try to put it in intellectual conception, when we try to express it in language, you get a variety of conceptions. You get a variety of linguistic expressions. The ancient Rig Veda says the truth is one, the wise speak of it differently. Ekam sat vipra bahuda vadanti. The truth is one, but the wise speak of it differently. So we don't say that the Advaitic interpretation which we follow is the one true path, but we say that it is a path, it will take you to the reality, and so will other paths too. So we are open not only to other Vedantic interpretations, but to other religions, to Christianity, Islam, other Buddhism, every other religion. We feel it takes you to the same realization.
Could you explain what is the core teaching of Advaita Vedanta? You talked about non-duality. Is
Yes.
it linked?
Right, that's a good question. That's really the next question. Luckily, though it's a vast tradition and complex and rich, it can also be put elegantly in one sentence. And that sentence would be, you are that. It's a Sanskrit, the translation of the Sanskrit, Tat Tvamasi. Tat means that absolute reality. You, the seeker, the sentient being, you are that. Now, in one sense, all of Advaita Vedanta can be seen as an expansion of that one teaching. That ultimate reality, according to Advaita Vedanta, is a non-dual reality. By non-dual, we mean that that everything that exists, everything that we see, experience in this universe, including ourselves, is not different from that reality. It does not constitute a countable second. It's not like there is a table and a chair and a human being and one ultimate reality, one more thing, not like that. So there is this ultimate reality, Brahman. And everything else, whatever we experience in the world, is not apart from it. Is that Brahman alone, appearing in these diverse ways. It seems different, but in reality, it is not different. So, in putting it this way, an appearance of diversity, an appearance of plurality, but the reality is non-dual. What is this reality? The most famous way in which it has been expressed is existence consciousness bliss. In Sanskrit, Sat Chit Ananda. Various, you don't find this particular formulation directly in one Upanishad, but it's put together from different Upanishads. Being itself, consciousness itself, bliss itself. As Vivekananda put it, not that that the ultimate reality exists, but it is existence itself. Not that it knows, but it is consciousness itself. Not that it is full of joy, it is joy or bliss itself. One way of understanding this is, if you look at the fundamental questions of philosophy, one branch of philosophy studies what's real. Is God real? Is the world real? Is matter real? Is mind real? So study of reality or being, what used to be called metaphysics at one time, is now called ontology, study ontos, being. And the Advaita answers this by saying, what is real? Existence is reality. Sat, the word used in Advaita is Sat. The second branch of philosophy would be, how do you know? How do you justify all this, your claims? So this branch is called epistemology, the study of knowledge, how we get knowledge. How do we justify our ontic or metaphysical claims? And Advaita Vedanta answers this by saying, all knowledge is based in consciousness, chit. That is what makes all knowledge or experience possible, consciousness. And then finally, a last question would be in philosophy, the other branch would be what used to be called ethics, what used to be called aesthetics, values, and what is beautiful. All of it now, one branch, the new name is axiology. So what's valuable? What's the point of it all? What's the meaning of it all? What's the purpose of it all? And Advaita Vedanta would answer ananda, bliss, fulfillment. So now you see the Advaitic formulation of the ultimate reality, Sat, Chit, Ananda, basically answers the most fundamental questions of philosophy. The ultimate reality is existence, ultimate reality is consciousness, ultimate reality is fulfillment or bliss. And these are not three aspects of the ultimate reality. It is that ultimate reality. Because of the way our mind works, we understand it in these three forms. Now, Advaita's real teaching is next. It says, what or where is that ultimate reality? And the answer is, it's you. The one who is experiencing this, the one who is seeking it, you are it. Now, one has to be careful here. It's not that you are part of it. It's not that everything is that one and you are also a little part of it. No, you are it, the whole of it. Even there's no whole or part relation there. But anyway, we can use the whole or part language. You're not a part of it. You are all of it. You are it. That ultimate reality, you are nothing but it, and it is nothing but you. Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. You are that means you are nothing but that. You are not a body, you are not an embodied being, you are not a sentient being, not somebody who goes through birth and death, not somebody who's a spiritual seeker. No, no, no. You are that absolute reality. And even more dramatically, that absolute reality is nothing apart from you. You who recognizes your indubitable existence, this existence awareness, that absolute reality is that and nothing apart from it. So this total identity of you and that absolute reality, that is the core teaching of Advaita Vedanta. Now, how does one get to it? What do you do with this? Yes, that would be the next question. What do you do with this? Well, the goal of Advaita Vedanta is self-realization, and one might ask, what's the purpose of self-realization? What's the point of self-realization? What do I get out of it? Well, you solve the existential problem. What's the point of it all? Why am I here? What am I? Everything is solved by that realization. Also, all our needs are met by that realization. The need for lasting joy and fulfillment. The need for overcoming suffering. This is instinctive. If you ask any living being what they're trying to do, you will notice that they are basically trying to overcome suffering and attain some fulfillment. And Advaita claims that it is entirely possible. And it is possible because it's your real nature. And so you need to realize this real nature. For whatever reason, we don't know it, we don't realize it, it doesn't seem to be real to us. And that's why we are suffering. That's why we are caught in this, like a dream, we are going through life. So we need to awaken to this reality, which is already there. It's not that you have to become Brahman, the absolute reality. You are that Brahman. You have to realize it. Now, realize it not by listening to a lecture or reading a book, that's part of it, but making it a living reality. Just like I think right now I'm Sarvapriyananda, this person sitting here. It must become absolutely clear to me I am limitless existence, consciousness, bliss, then what will happen is the results will flow immediately. It will become clear that I cannot die. This body will die, but I'm not the body anyway. The body is an appearance in me. It appears and it disappears. I'm perfectly all right. I do not have any needs. It's only identified with this little existence that I seem to need: food, water, air, pleasure, fulfillment, and goals in life. But as the absolute reality, I'm ever fulfilled. There's nothing that really I need. So I overcome this poverty, which is always there in the human condition. I am beyond all suffering, suffering of death, suffering of old age and disease, suffering of frustration and unhappiness. All of these are related to the body and mind. When I clearly realize my nature as the background existence, consciousness, bliss, it's done. So it's really worthwhile. Not only worthwhile, Advaita would claim that's what everybody's doing. Whether you know Advaita or not, whether you know or you're interested in philosophy or not, whatever you do in life is basically this project. We are trying to overcome unhappiness. We are trying to find fulfillment. And Advaita says it's possible by realizing what you already are, what is the nature of everything that you can realize. So how do you do that? So it's a question of practice. Should I go into that now? The question
Oh,
of
yes, please. The question of practice is my main interest in that moment, because there's a lot of Neo Advaita schools that
yeah.
seems to claim that there's nothing to do, nothing to practice, and that the practice can be detrimental to the realization. So it can be a little bit confusing. So maybe your
Yes,
thoughts on that?
that is a more of an advanced question. Let me set out the basic background of Advaitic practice. Then it'll be easier to deal with that question which you are asking. So the basic background of Advaita practice is this. If Advaita is telling us that I am that, Sanskrit sentence, Tattvamasi, you are that, the realization should be Aham Brahmasmi in Sanskrit, which means I am Brahman. Now, there shouldn't be any problem. But then we say that, yes, I hear you, but I have problems. And when you say I am Brahman, I can't honestly say that because I'm not very sure what Brahman is. And I seem to be this limited being, this body of flesh and blood, which is aging and subject to disease, hunger, thirst. I am a mind. I have a mind, or I am a mind, whichever way you take it, which is subject to so much of suffering. Um, you know, somebody behaves a little badly with me and I feel hurt. My desires are not met. I feel frustrated. And so it goes on. So Advaita will tell us, so this is called ignorance. You are Brahman, but you do not know it. You do not realize it. So this not knowing, not realizing our true nature, this is the fundamental problem. This is called ignorance. Ignorance, the real nature of ourselves. And the solution for ignorance is knowledge. And knowledge of what? Knowledge of ourselves, what we truly are. What Vedanta says that you are Brahman, that knowledge is necessary. It will overcome the ignorance. How do you generate that knowledge? What is the practice? In Vedanta, the practice is hearing, contemplation, meditation, hearing, reasoning, meditation. Let's make it simpler. Hearing, reasoning, meditation. In Sanskrit, Shravana, Manana, Nididhyasana. So it means a course of study of the Vedantic texts under a competent teacher, and then reasoning about it, and then finally meditating on what you have got. So basically, the first step is completed when when you have studied the texts. Now you know what the texts are telling you. You are not confused about what is the point of these texts. So you know that I am that non-dual Brahman. This is what the texts are telling me. But then I have many questions. How am I the non-dual Brahman? What is the non-dual Brahman? What is the proof that such a thing exists? I have many, many, many questions. So those questions have to be resolved in a stage called reasoning. Mananam means cogitation, reasoning. And that stage is complete when I can say, I not only know the teaching, but I understand the teaching. I have clarity now. I get it. Yes. I am convinced. Yes. But I still say it's not a reality. I'm still the same guy. It's still here in the head. I don't feel it to be a reality for whatever reason. And I still behave in life just as I used to behave. I still feel hurt. I still feel unhappy. I feel scared, anxious. To overcome that, Vedanta prescribes a course of meditation. Um, Meditation on what? So it's meditation on the clarity which has been gained by the study and reasoning. By the study and reasoning, I have clarity about the teaching that I am the non-dual Brahman, and how and that clarity, I sit and meditate. There are many techniques which you spend a lot of time staying with that clarity until hopefully it becomes a living reality and you can live on the basis of that knowledge. But now the problem comes. One can say that, look, I've been studying and for years and years, I'm not making any progress. It's not becoming clear. It's not becoming a living reality. Enlightenment is not coming. So what do I do? Then Vedanta says there's a next level of problem, which is called in Sanskrit, um, unsteady mind or scattered mind. In Sanskrit, chitta vikshepa. The mind is unable to grasp the teaching. Yes, first level problem is ignorant mind. Ignorance is the problem. Second level problem is scattered mind. And the scattered mind, the only solution for that, with a scattered mind, you cannot grasp the teaching. So the scattered mind, only solution for that is focused mind. And focused mind, the method is meditation. This is a different kind of meditation from the one which we did earlier. So this meditation is meant for, in Sanskrit, chitta ekagrata, focus of the mind. Yogic meditation is very well known in India. There is a Vedic word for it, upasana. Upasana literally means worship. Literally, it means sitting near, but it means worship, worship of the divine in some form, which helps you to focus the mind and purify the emotions. Now, there one might say, well, I have been trying to meditate for a long time, but meditation is impossible for me. Mind is too restless. Then Vedanta says there's a third and final level of problem, which is called impure mind. In Sanskrit, chitta mala, impure mind. Mind is conditioned with negativities, with patterns of behavior and desiring extroversion flowing out into the world. So this mind has to be purified. The purification of the mind in Sanskrit is called chitta shuddhi. This is the hard work of spiritual life, the unglamorous work of spiritual life, purification of our inner being. And one powerful way, there are many ways of doing it. One powerful way of doing it is karma yoga. Karma yoga is, in one sense, selfless action. That's how Vivekananda taught it. Selfless action. So our whole way of existing in this world and behaving in this world, because we are so self-centered. One might ask, what is the problem in being self-centered in Advaita? Well, because the whole problem is in our wrong understanding of the self. If our understanding of the self is as it is now, I am this little person, and Advaita is teaching us just the opposite. You are the reality of the entire universe. You're not one little person. So our holding on to this little personality is the problem. And overcoming this holding on to the little personality through selfless action, completely changing the way we are acting in society, the attitude, not the action itself. It's quite possible to go on doing the same action, but now you can do it. You can do this action for self-purification as a service to the world, or if you believe in God, even better, as a worship of God. And once we do this, this karma yoga will purify the mind. With a pure mind, meditation becomes easy. With a pure mind, when we sit down for meditation, mind is calmed and concentrated easily. And with a pure and concentrated mind, the Vedantic teachings, they take root. You grasp them. When through the hearing and the reasoning and the meditation, it becomes a living reality. Suddenly you realize, oh, it is true. It has always been true that I and everybody else, we are all this one existence, consciousness bliss. The Vivekananda put it this way: the divinity within us and the oneness of all existence. So the divinity within us, our real nature, which is a divine nature, And that is the oneness of all existence. That becomes clear to us. So if you want it in a nutshell, think of a 3x3 matrix. 3 levels of problems, 3 levels of solutions, and 3 levels of methods. Top level problem, ignorant mind. Solution, knowledge. Method, what is called jnana yoga, the yoga of knowledge. Hearing, reasoning, meditating. Second level problem, scattered mind. Solution, focused mind. Method, upasana or dhyana, meditation. And then third level problem, impure mind. Solution, pure mind. Method, karma yoga. So you have a 3x3 matrix. So this is the fundamental matrix of spiritual practice. The Sanskrit word is sadhana, practices, which will take you to the realization of what already exists. That's the beauty of Advaita Vedanta. Usually what sadhana does is it tries to purify, it tries to build up, develop. But Advaita finally is not about purifying, it's not about developing, it's not about making something new. It's about revealing it's already there. Perfection is already there, so that is revealed. Yes. I think that can lead to the more advanced questions about Neo
Yes.
Advaita.
Because there's in what you said, it reminds me a little bit of the Buddhist curriculum, because I come from a Buddhist background. So there's listening and contemplating, then practicing, and there's purifications and concentration and clear view of the reality. So it's really practice oriented. And
Yes.
but my question is, what's the value, or what are your thoughts about this trend, or yes, this trend of if we can call it Neo Advaita, which what I said earlier seems to claim that there's no practice, and that practice can be harmful.
Yeah, that's a good question. Now, first, see in which sense they are right. Advaita would say they are right from an ultimate perspective. Yes, from the perspective of Brahman, the ultimate reality of the nature of all things, which is already there and perfect. There's nothing to be done. What's to be done there? And nothing can be done, nothing needs to be done, and nothing should be done about it. So all of that it's already there in place. Now, the question is, we need something. That's why we are in spiritual life. We are coming with a set of problems, and that needs to be solved. So the first problem is ignorance. Second problem is the scattered mind. Third problem is an impure and conditioned mind. In each of these cases, you need a solution. You can't just say that you are Brahman and leave it at that. See, the appeal of the Neo-Advaitic path is this. It seems to say that enlightenment is instantaneous and it is effortless. Instantaneous and effort. Who doesn't want to be fully enlightened now and without any effort at all? Also, it is backed up by a certain power. The power is this. It has two sides. First of all, it is our real nature. It is the truth. It is the ultimate truth. And that really speaks to something deep within us. That's why it is so attractive. Second, the teacher. So in some cases, at least, I think the Neo Advaita teachers were very popular in some circles. They have insight. Some of them, at least, have genuine insight. They have genuine awakening. That accounts for the power, the hold that you have. So when a person is speaking the truth about you, and that person has experienced the truth, and it calls to something within you. So I think that's valuable and that's very powerful. However, the problem is this. In many cases, the teachers themselves have gone through a long process of seeking. They have had their own personal journey. And you cannot short circuit somebody else's personal journey. It doesn't work. It takes time. life. So what will happen is I might be very attracted to the New Advaita teachings and fascinated and even temporarily uplifted, very temporarily uplifted. But then life has a way of teaching me. When I come back into contact with my own life, I find so many problems are unresolved. And my life has not changed. My reactions to life have not changed. And that temporary upliftment vanishes very quickly. And I don't seem to be making any progress. Not only that, if I was doing, there's some actual harm can result if I was doing a spiritual practice. And then now I feel, oh, I get it. And it's not necessary. So I weaken the spiritual practice or I let it go altogether. Um, Sometimes people feel misunderstand. So we have these all these negativities already in our mind, all these weaknesses already in the mind. And the mind has a way of playing tricks. It can use even the highest spiritual teaching and twist it around to make excuses for itself. Vivekananda said, Vedanta is practical only in the sense of the ideal. Beware of teachers who pull down the ideal to the present reality of your life. The whole goal of Vedanta is to push your present reality to the ideal. Uh, Beware of teachers who make excuses for our weaknesses. um, that will make the teacher very popular, but ultimately doesn't help. It might even harm a seeker. So if I have problems, I want from you solutions. Notice one interesting thing. Brahman is already there. The ultimate reality of things is already there. And it is perfectly comfortable with all our problems. Brahman can coexist nicely with all our. It is what gives existence to samsara. It is what gives existence to even our so-called problems. So the problems have to be dissolved at that level. If I have a physical disease, it has to be resolved at the physical level. If I have mental disease, mental impurities, they have to be resolved at that level. So there, the various practices of meditation, the various ethical and moral groundings, they are absolutely necessary. Then only it works. And then only the rest. So as I said, the three levels of practice. The first level at the level of our action, second at the level of the mind, and then finally at the level of understanding or realization.
And you talked about the daily life or the problems that one can encounter in daily life that can prevent uh, realization or after a non-dual meeting, maybe. And how does one can integrate the practice in his daily life? Because daily life can be difficult with work and family and all the activities. Is it possible for someone who is fully occupied to be to have a practice and to go from beginner to enlightened?
First answer, of course, yes, absolutely yes. There is no doubt about it. I think that is why the Bhagavad Gita was taught in the battlefield. What is the worst thing a person can be involved in? It is war. It is fighting. It's the worst of human endeavors. But if you can be spiritual in the middle of that, suppose you can be spiritual in the middle of that. That seems to be what the Gita is saying. Then all of us, no matter how busy we are, how much pressure there is, we can still be spiritual. We can carry on a spiritual life. So what Advaita suggests is that this gap between the secular and the sacred, our life and the spiritual, our worldly life and spiritual life, this gap is harmful for both. Um, as you said, family and job, it takes so much time and energy. It sucks out our time and energy, especially mental energy. So very little time and energy is left for a spiritual practice. You get exhausted. How much time is there for meditation? How much energy is left for scriptural study? On the other hand, if we separate our worldly life from spiritual life, then very soon worldly life seems meaningless. Why am I doing this? Young people are very enthusiastic about worldly life, but after 10, 20, 30 years, you begin to see it's more of the same, and very soon it will be over and get old and sick and die. That's it. What's the point of most of the day I'm spending for this. One person came, elderly person came recently, and she was saying, before coming to spiritual life, I used to think I will live a few years at more at the most, and most just about what I had to do in life is over. Studies and job and family, it's all done with. Why should I live anymore? What's the point of it? It's just suffering going to increase. So our life becomes meaningless. When we put them together, we erase the boundary between spiritual life and worldly life, and we put them together. Then worldly life gets meaning, and spiritual life gets time and energy. It gets energized. Can we do that? Can we put them together? Yes. The answer is yes. Especially the teaching of karma yoga is very powerful. In karma yoga, all the work that we do, family and job, and personal, whatever work we do for ourselves, all of that can be spiritualized. Those who are devotional by nature, they can offer it as a worship, like a ritual. You do a ritual in the shrine, but your office work can be a ritual. You're taking care of your family can be a ritual. So service attitude, that I'm serving the divine in all these forms, that is a powerful way of spiritualizing our daily life, of erasing the difference between spiritual life and worldly life. Sri Ramakrishna used to say that if you have a series of zeros, the total value is still zero. And if you put one before the zeros, then every zero gets a value, 10 and 100 and 1,000. So all the zeros are worldly life. You put them together, after some time, you'll see it's meaningless, it's pointless. Why should I live anymore? I think the famous French writer Camus, he said the only serious philosophical question is why I should not commit suicide. Why should I not kill myself? The answer is, if you have the one, then it all gets meaning. So, karma yoga helps you to erase the distinction between spiritual life and daily life, worldly life. And this distinction we must erase. Now, some practical point. Even before we do that, it's a big step, spiritualizing the whole of life. Even before we do that, even if you have, yes, this is my worldly life and my office life, my family life, and this is my meditation and my study, even then a person in the world can be spiritual. Make time for it. We make time for everything in this world. When you say we're pressurized, yes, some people are very, very busy, but most people also waste a lot of time. We, we have time and energy for quite a serious amount of spiritual practice. Yeah. So these two options. One is introduce a spiritual practice in your life. Make time for it. Make room for it. Physically, make space. This is my shrine. I'm not going to do anything else here. This is my meditation seat. It's only for meditation. This is my, scriptural study time. You make temporal room for it. Make spatial room for it. And the second option is, in addition, whatever we are doing in the world, spiritualize it. So there's a continuity between spiritual life and the world. I think, I don't know who said it, Sam Harris, somebody was saying very beautifully, simply he put it, that one must strive to erase the difference between practice and life.
I've got another question on practice. Can everyone practice? That is to say, are there contraindications, or can sometimes meditation, for example, can be dangerous for some people?
That's a good question. Can everybody practice? Yes, all it needs is interest. And one should be interested, because if you're not interested, Vedanta will say one day you'll be interested in this life or next life. So better take an interest in it as soon as you can. Why, take this long route around? All right. Can there be problems? Yes, there can be. There can be. These are all powerful practices, and often they require a certain amount of preparation before you take them up. So what are the problems? I will speak in terms of the 4 yogas. The Vedanta talks about Jnana Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, devotional practice, Raja Yoga, meditation practice, and Karma Yoga. Work as service, work as spiritual service, worship, work as worship. So the yoga of knowledge, the yoga of devotion or love, the yoga of meditation, and yoga of work. Each one of them can take you to the highest realization. By the way, little clarification here. Those who have walked on the path of Advaita Vedanta, they might be puzzled by this, because this fourfold classification was made by Swami Vivekananda recently. It's a contemporary classification. What he does is he takes up the various forms of practices in various spiritual traditions, broadly puts it under a philosophical practice, a meditative practice, a devotional practice, and a work as practice, action practice. So Advaita Vedanta is primarily a knowledge practice, a philosophical practice and philosophical inquiry. Now, what are the contraindications? Well, the yoga of knowledge can often become an intellectual exercise. I've read these books, I've heard these talks, I know all the arguments, I can prove I am right and you are wrong. Well, that is not spiritual. It does not benefit one in spiritual life, actually. That might be part of the initial study and, when you enter the path, but one should not stop there. But that's the danger. It can become very intellectual up there, and that's it. The contraindication in the yogic path could be twofold. One is, even when things go well, it tends to promote a kind of selfishness. My peace of mind, my yogic, my time for meditation, I should not be disturbed. I step away from the world. The world is full of too much disturbance. I don't want to engage with people in the world. I need peace within. It can become selfish. So where we do not do what is expected of us, where, service, a little bit of good to others, we don't do that. And that can actually damage our spiritual life. Then the third, the devotional practice. The meditative practice has another side to it, because it is the one which directly deals with the mind and tries to focus the powers of the mind through various meditative techniques. It can be dangerous if the mind is not balanced, if there is not sufficient purity in the mind, clarity in the mind, peace in the mind. These are prerequisites for advanced meditative practices. If my mind is already disturbed, meditation can make it worse. It's much better to be engaged in society. Maybe a devotional practice might be much better. Otherwise, just sitting I have heard of people just sitting in meditation, already existing turbulence in the mind becomes more powerful. It takes over the whole mind then. Then the devotional practice, it can lead to sentimentalism, emotionalism, tears coming in the eyes, crying in prayer, name of God. It's good, but it can be just emotion. It need not be very spiritual. And that should be controlled. Devotion does not mean expression of emotion. It's rather, emotion should be inwards. The moment we express a deep feeling, the power goes away. If we talk about it, if I start crying and singing and dancing, and the power actually goes away. It's better to hold it down. Also, the devotional path, and this is the paradox of it. These are paths of love, of faith and worship and adoration. And these are the ones which often lead to fanaticism and hatred of the other and narrowness. So you'll often see there's the religions of love, of devotion, which are also the most fanatical religions, leading to rejection of the other, hatred against the other, and even violence and so on. And it's not surprising in one sense, because it's emotion. You're playing with emotion. That which is full of love can flip into hatred immediately also. And the difficulty in the path of service, in the path of good works, is busyness, extroversion. Because you're doing good. You're running a school, you're running a hospital, you're serving poor people. And the society appreciates. See, all the other practices, the knowledge practice, the devotional practice, the meditation practice, that's private. That's your business. I'm not really involved in it. But service, when you engage with society and selflessly try to do good to others, immediately society responds with tremendous approval. And you can be sucked into a cycle of busyness, and that again also is not spiritual. That's why Vivekananda recommended a harmony of these four. He says they can balance each other. Have all of them in your life. One of them might be a primary because your nature is that. So Hinduism makes a big deal about the nature of a person. Because of our past lives, we have built up our minds. Our problems, weakness, and strengths have developed in a particular way. All the paths are good, but all may not be equally good for me. Some may be more appropriate for me. And when we practice them, you will find some seem more alive, more interesting, more, I make quick progress in that. Vivekananda said, you have all four in your life, make a balance of it. Be meditative, be philosophically inquisitive, be full of love and devotion, and be of selfless service to others. That is the safest, most wholesome, and most powerful way, actually.
And to navigate these ways, these paths, is it necessary to have a teacher to benefit from these teachings and to avoid some difficulties?
Yes, a teacher, a guru is highly recommended, and not just a guru, a part of a lineage. So that's very important in Hinduism. Hinduism has a whole range of lineages. They're called parampara. Parampara means sequential transmission of the teachings. Therefore, a lineage will teach you a particular tradition, or a traditional lineage will have its own structure, and have experts in our own generation who are still living masters of that tradition. So maybe they're not enlightened, but they are sufficiently advanced on the path to be of help to us. So when I can refer back to the teachers of the tradition, I can refer back to the texts of the tradition. So in our own Ramakrishna Vivekananda tradition, there are the senior monks who by tradition have by sequence have been initiated from earlier generations of masters. And they are available to give us spiritual advice. So guru is very important, a living master and a living tradition. It's important to be part of a living tradition. You can be eclectic, you can be open, and one should be open. It's good to learn from other traditions, which is also very good, and I think um, very safe and wholesome to have a home tradition. Instead of saying that I mix everything, I don't belong to anything. You belong to something, you commit to something, and then be open. Enrich yourself by all these living traditions around you.
And do you have some red flags to avoid difficulties with some teachers?
Ethical life. So one can be good without being spiritual, but one cannot be spiritual without being good. We don't know what vision somebody has, what mystical experience somebody has, how advanced they are. There are some very advanced masters who can judge this, but we cannot. But what we can judge, we all have a sense of right and wrong. And if we feel some place or some teacher is violating ethics, that's a red flag. What will happen to that teacher? That's the teacher's karma, but better to avoid such a teacher. It can be devastating to find that one's own teacher might violate ethics. One should be careful there. One should not become, some people are experts at fault finding. Especially it happens in religious life, or spiritual life. There's a reason for that, because we are striving for perfection. It is not easy to be perfect oneself. So first, I want my teacher to be perfect, and perfect by my idea of perfection. Don't do that. Don't judge like that. But broad rules of ethics, truth, self-control, uh, selflessness, these are very good rules, and these are very good criteria. Vivekananda gave some criteria of truth. If it strengthens you, you accept it. If it weakens you, reject it as poison. If a teacher is making you dependent on the teacher, that's not a good sign. Teacher should make you independent, should transmit the knowledge so that you have it yourself. Then he said, that which is selfish, you reject as false. That which is selfless, you accept as the truth. That which unites, you can see there is truth in that. That which divides is likely not to be true. These are broad guidelines. One has to be intelligent in applying them. Traditional Advaita Vedanta Upanishads speak about uh, three criterion of a good teacher. Shrotriya, Brahmanishta, Akamahata. Shrotriya means must be master of the tradition. So must have something to transmit to me.
Mm.
You can't just say, I'm enlightened. All right, so can you teach me? Oh, I don't know anything. I don't know the tradition. I don't know the text. That's no good. So the teacher must be a master of at least the tradition to which that person belongs, should have something authentic to transmit to me. That goes without saying. That's one. But also, second, Brahmanishta literally means centered in Brahman. So the teacher's life should be a spiritual life, should not be a part-timer. You know, I'm I'm busy earning millions on the Wall Street, and yeah, as a part-time, I also teach you spirituality. No, if you're a teacher, you must be a whole-time spiritual seeker. Your whole life must be about spirituality. So centered in Brahman. And third is akamahata. It means desireless, but the wording is very, very precise. It means not damaged by desire, not destroyed by desire. So the teacher must not have worldly desires. So the teacher is trying to become rich at my expense, or the teacher is trying to play a power game, or sexual morality. These things the teacher is violating. These are not good signs. These are red flags.
What book can you recommend to a beginner to have a broad view on the Advaita Vedanta teachings?
Among the traditional texts, one text one should take up is the Bhagavad Gita. And there are many, many translations available. Many of them are good. So take up the Bhagavad Gita to get an idea of what Vedanta is all about. And the Bhagavad Gita, by the way, is not just Advaita Vedanta. It's all other schools of Vedanta also have great respect for the Gita.
Mm.
Upanishads are a little more esoteric because it's a little difficult to understand without a teacher. But the Gita is straight. It speaks to you. Then among modern teachers, I would say start with Vivekananda. He is the one who built the bridge between ancient India and the modern West. So Vivekananda, start with the four yogas of Vivekananda. Jnana Yoga, way of knowledge, Karma Yoga, the way of action, Bhakti Yoga, the way of devotion, and Raja Yoga, the way of meditation. Start with those. Those contain his basic teachings of Vedanta.
Okay, I will put the reference on the description, and thank you very much. We are coming to the end of this interview, and I would like to thank you for the generosity and the richness of your responses. So thank you very much, and have a wonderful day. And I will upload the video in maybe 1 month because I have to make the French subtitles, and it can be a little long sometimes.
Yes, yes, I understand. Thank you for having me. I am going to France actually.
Oh,
Um, that is, I've never been there, but the first visit, that is in the third week of August
oh
this year.
yes.
Third week of August. We have a center, a Vedanta center near Paris.
Mm-hmm.
Great.
Oh yes.
And there's a wonderful teacher there, Swami Atmarupananda.
Mm-hmm.
So you can always refer to him. If somebody is in France, they can refer to him for teachings or recommendations of books and things like that. And do visit the center. I've not been there yet, but I hear it's a beautiful center.
That's perfect. Thank you very much, and
Thank you.
have a
You
good
have a
day.
wonderful day. Thank you for having me.
Bye.
Thank you.